Hello, my name is John Gibb, and for my EDU 1107 micro teaching assignment, I am focusing on Erik Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. I'm actually here in my classroom with this sweet clear touch board, so I hope that you can see the presentation well. I just want to start off by talking about Erikson's theory of psychosocial development and how Erikson believed that over the course of a person's life, they enter within 8 different stages. Now, it's also important to note that everybody's different. Some people may enter a stage late, some people may enter a stage early. It just depends on the circumstances. We start here with infancy, with trust versus mistrust, and it goes all the way into an older adult into the 60s and 70s with integrity versus despair. I just want to start off by talking a little bit about Erik Erikson himself and his background information. Erik Erikson was born in 1902. He died in 1994. His studies were greatly influenced by a man named Sigmund Freud. And when I was in graduate school, I had the opportunity of studying Freud a little bit and his research regarding personality with the id, the ego, and the superego. Freud was very much concerned with the ego aspect of personality, which deals more with reality, whereas Erikson was more interested in the ego, which deals with reality. Freud, on the other hand, was very much concerned with the id, or sort of the instincts regarding personality. Interesting information about Erikson is he married this woman named Joan, and after he passed away in '94, Joan really continued the research that Erik Erikson was conducting regarding child development and the impact of culture and society on that development. Like I said, he was very concerned with the influence of society and culture on child development, and in some of the work that he did, he studied American Indian and Aboriginal children. In 1950, he wrote a book called Childhood and Society. It was the first time we really ever were introduced to his theory of psychosocial development. And I have a quote here I want to share. Children love and want to be loved, and they very much prefer the joy of accomplishment to the triumph of hateful failure. Do not mistake a child for his symptom. And as we go through here, at the very bottom of the screen, you'll see the citation, the references that I am using for this. Before we get too much into the psychosocial theory, I wanted to talk about the structural model of personality, Sigmund Freud's model of personality with the id, the ego, and the superego. Freud believed that personality was very complex and contained many different elements rather than just a single component. And so he came up with, he established the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is something that we're born with. This deals with instincts, and this is entirely unconscious. So when you're born, when you're a kid, you want things. You seek that immediate gratification, and so this is what the id is. And this is something that Freud was very much concerned with. The ego is responsible for dealing with the reality, and this aspect or element of personality is what Erikson was concerned with. It develops from the id and ensures that the impulses of the id can be expressed in a manner acceptable in the real world. So at this point, we start weighing the costs and the benefits of our actions before deciding to act upon an impulse. So we start thinking more rationally, I guess, and we start weighing the pros and the cons and the costs and the benefits in order to make the right decision. Now, the superego is sort of a hyperbolized version of the ego, in the sense that with the superego, you're taking into consideration morals and ideals, morals that have been passed down from our parents, or ideals within a society or within a community. And so you probably heard that everybody has a conscience. Well, this is what the superego is. It's sort of like having a devil and an angel on your shoulder. Your devil is the id, and your angel is the superego trying to influence your decision making. 3 elements: ego identity developed by human interaction, ego strength deals with individuals becoming competent in areas of life, and conflict, individuals struggle to attain some psychological quality. We're going to talk about conflict and crises because that's very important in Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. The learning goal of this assignment is students will be able to summarize and explain Erikson's theory of psychosocial development. Some of the overarching questions or essential questions, as some like to refer to it as: how does the ego develop? And how does our understanding of psychosocial development lead to better teaching strategies? Since we're in an education course, I think it's important to not only understand the theories, but how can we use those theories in order to guide instruction within our classrooms. And here's sort of a good visual that I found looking at Freud's theory of personality. I want it now, that instant gratification, the id. I need to do a bit of planning to get it, that ego, having some sort of a plan where you're kind of weighing the costs and benefits of something. Super ego, you can't have it, it's not right. So again, relying on some sort of a moral compass or a set of ideals. Overview: Erikson believed that there were 8 psychosocial stages in a person's life. 5 of these occur during adolescence, and 3 of these occur during adulthood. It's built on the epigenetic principle. Personality develops in a predetermined order and builds on stages. So you can't really get to stage 7 unless you've achieved stage 6, that sort of thing. Each stage has a psychosocial crisis that has a positive and negative impact. And crisis, when we're talking about crisis, Erikson believed that throughout our life we're going to experience crises, and that's important because it really shapes our development as people. Crisis is the internal struggle or challenge with which a person must negotiate and deal with in order to grow and develop. A successful passage through each stage will lead to a virtue. We're going to talk about each of the virtues as we go through this. This is a good visual representation of the stages of psychosocial development. Down here we have trust versus mistrust at infancy, and then we have integrity versus despair as you enter into your late adulthood. And as you go up, each of these stages increases in complexity. So we're going to start off with stage 1, trust versus mistrust. This occurs from birth to 18 months. This is the most fundamental stage in life. A child develops trust based on the dependability and quality of a caretaker. So if a caretaker fails to provide any sort of adequate care, they grow up with this attitude that they're unable to trust any sort of adult. And I have students in my classroom who don't trust adults because of their traumatic childhood experience. Erikson believes successful development was all about striking a balance. You're not going to have 100% trust. It's okay to have a little bit of mistrust, because when you grow up, you got to be able to trust some people and not trust some people. So having some sort of balance is important, according to Erikson. Can too much of a good thing be bad? Yes, too much trust can be a bad thing, because as you grow up, not everybody's going to be 100% trustful or trustworthy. When this occurs, children acquire hope, so that they develop the virtue of hope and openness to experience, tempered by some wariness that danger may be present. Stage 2, autonomy versus shame and doubt. This occurs 1.5 to 3 years. Children develop a greater sense of personal control. They want to be more independent, and so they can start making choices like, what clothes do I want to wear, what shoes do I want to wear this day. They start brushing their teeth. They start using the restroom on their own. So toilet training occurs during this stage. And so the virtue of will develops, the belief that children can act with intention, within reasons, and within limits. Stage 3, initiative versus guilt. It occurs usually between 3 and 5 years of age. So if you teach preschool or even some kindergarten classes, this is the stage that is important to you. Children assert their power and control of the world. They want to be engaged in some sort of a play activity, or they want to ask a whole bunch of questions because they're curious about something. They feel capable and able to lead others. At this stage, they can feel guilt, and they can have self-doubt, and the virtue of purpose develops. They start thinking that they have some sort of a purpose in the world. Stage 4, industry versus inferiority. So if you teach middle school students or even some elementary school students, this is your stage that you should be concerned with. Children at this stage are learning to read and write. They are now in school, so they have new social and academic demands that need to be met. They develop a sense of pride in their accomplishments and their abilities. So, when they get 100% or when they get a trophy, they're very prideful. At this stage, it's very important that you encourage students, that you praise students for any sort of a good deed or good behavior. And competence is developed. And right here, I put some kind of instructional strategies that I think are important when you're trying to appeal to this age group. Cooperative learning strategies, differentiated instruction, you're placing less restrictions on students, and you encourage students often so that they can become successful. Stage 5 is the stage that I'm concerned with as a high school educator. 12 to 18 years, this is during their rebellious teenage years. Children begin to look toward the future, so they start to envision what they're going to do once they graduate high school and they go off into the real world. Do they want to go to college? Do they want to go to trade school? That sort of thing. The virtue of fidelity develops, the ability to live by society's standards and expectations. So they start understanding what is expected of them, and what is expected of them by their society and from their peers. They also develop or establish a personal identity. They're trying to find out who they are. So maybe they're exploring with their sexual orientation or with their gender identity during this stage. They have a strong sense of self, or they could feel insecure if they're not progressing socially within the school environment. They may feel lonely or they may feel insecure about themselves. Identity is shaped by experiences and interactions with others. So they're trying to figure out who they are and how they fit into their school or how they fit into the world that they live in. And here's a quote by Erickson: "The adolescent mind is essentially a mind or moratorium, a psychosocial stage between childhood and adulthood, and between the morality learned by the child and the ethics to be developed by the adult." And so here are some things that you could do with students at the high school level: differentiated instruction, learner-led instruction, the use of progress charts, and giving students more choice. I think those are some important strategies that you could use, or pedagogical practices that you could use at the high school level. Stage 6 is intimacy versus isolation. So between 18 to 40 years old, people are engaging they're trying to establish more close, intimate relationships. Virtual love develops. A lot of times this is the stage where people find their forever soulmate, and they get married and they start a family, that sort of thing. Having a strong sense of personal identity leads to developing intimate relationships. So without having a strong sense of identity from stage 5, you're not going to develop long-lasting intimate relationships. So that's why it's important to have a strong sense of personal identity. If you have a poor sense of self, you're going to end up not having that intimate relationship, and you're going to be lonely, according to Erickson. 7, generativity versus stagnation. This occurs between 40 to 65 years of age. So this is when people start settling down with their careers and their relationships, and some people start having grandchildren. Their kids grow up, they go off to college, that sort of thing. Virtue of care develops. During this stage, people are typically more active in their home life and within their community. And people are proud of their accomplishments. They watch their children grow up, and they have this goal to achieve unity with their life partner. All right, stage 8, integrity versus despair, 65 years and up. This is when people slow down productivity. They enter retirement, and they have this opportunity to reflect back on their life. Do they have any regrets? And a lot of people typically do have regrets. So they kind of have the opportunity to kind of reflect back on everything. And they contemplate their accomplishments, or they start thinking about things they could have done differently and that sort of thing. The virtue of wisdom develops. We hear this idea that once you get older, you get more wise. So, the virtue of wisdom develops during this stage. All right, overarching question review. So how does the ego develop? Well, according to Erickson, it develops over a series of stages in which people are exposed to a series of crises that they have to overcome in order to be successful. And that the crises that we experience really shapes how we are developmentally. And how does our understanding of psychosocial development lead to better teaching strategies? Well, having an understanding of these, of this theory will, kind of guide instruction. So, for me, I'm focused more on stage 5. So knowing where a child is developmentally will give me an idea of what their needs are and how I can shape or adjust curriculum to meet those needs. All right? And that's pretty much it. And I look forward to watching all of your presentations and to getting an idea of some of the theories that are out there and how those theories can be used to shape instruction in curriculum. So, thank you.